Hey guys, Palsteron here, and buckle up. There is a 3-minute teaser video out there which just dropped with Mark talking over some of the quality of life changes. For 3.28, which is upcoming in a few days, we're going to get the reveal, and afterwards on the 6th of March, it's going to launch. And another big thing is there are some Easter eggs in here that I want to go over. Some of them might even hint at how big the Atlas changes coming are going to be. But I'll just start with the obvious changes that were discussed in the video, and then we're going to talk about what's happening in the background and what else we can glean from this. The first thing that we see is quality of life change in terms of favorite trades. This means that, for example, Divines to Chaos is something everybody always does, so you can favorite and it's going to show up right there in your favorites. It does have its own category, meaning there's probably not going to be a max per se. Maybe the max is the whole window, but maybe you can even scroll down. Maybe you can make 100. Who knows? He doesn't really discuss it. But the second big change is this button right here, which opens your stash, which is extremely helpful. It especially helps because you don't have to position Faustus right next to you if you don't really want to. Next change that we have is there are landmark rooms. He talked about 20 of them. So what do these rooms actually do? They are in campaign. So they should give us some kind of buffs, just like, for example, in Act 2, when you're getting the Rogue Exiles with the jewelry stash, right? There's like hidden things you can do throughout the campaign, or like the free unique that you're getting. And he gives an example of this about the Karui Island in Act 6, where each of these, when you kill them, give a basic tattoo. Now, the weird thing is they both give 2 Kohama tattoos, from what I remember, which is very much on theme. So the question is this the first zone where you're going to get tattoos? And are there other zones that have tattoos as well that are themed differently? Hard to say, but thinking about what these rooms could actually be, I came up with a few of them. It could be a nameless Sia, sort of like you get at the end of the Path of the Exile 2 campaign, where Elder Maddox gives you a random unique item that you can choose from a list, kind of like nameless Seer. We could get a fixed 5-link just as we got in Breach League, maybe free Exalt Divine even, who knows? Probably not, but one can hope. And the other thing is we saw 6 mobs in this reveal. We don't know if they all drop tattoos, but that's what he said. In this video, he only picks up 2 though, from the rare and from one of the white mobs. This next one is huge for quality of life. Divination card hand-ins are now a lot easier. You're now saving 2 clicks. So what you have to do is control click the card in, click trade, control click whatever you got out. Now all you have to do is control click in, done. Not only do you not have to click the trade whatsoever, the next hand-in that you do will automatically pop out the old one. And this is a huge deal because while Divination cards used to be novel, nowadays there's so much trash in them that you just have to adjust your filters exactly. And if you don't, you're just left with this bunch of waste. Also, chaotic dispositions, which are a hand-in for 1 card, which just gives 5 chaos. I literally sold those on the currency exchange for 4 chaos, just so I'm saving the clicks. Not anymore. Then we have a lab change, which concerns everybody that used a Transfigured Gem that has more than 1 version. You don't have to roll the 50-50 anymore. So the way it used to be is, for example, you put in Penance Brand, and then you would craft, and then you hope you get the version that you want. But now you can pick and choose from each version. This is a big deal for a few archetypes, for example, Penance Brand, Bama, all the Golem types, Spark, Ball Lightning, Detonate Dead, Bone Shatter, and many, many more. Those are just the more meta options. So that's a lot less frictions for these kind of builds, especially on League Start. Then we got some other quickies, like you can now hover over the sales history and see which item you sold. You don't just see the name. And whenever you divine, you have these numbers highlighted that will actually change. That's not only helpful for knowing which numbers will change, but also helpful because if you divine a lot, it can be kind of tiresome for your eyes to see what's going on, especially if you're making high tier items that need like, I don't know, 20, 40, 60 divines. Now, Ritual got some pretty nice changes, 3 in fact. The first one is whenever you complete all your rituals, it has like this border right here, signaling it. The second thing is all rituals complete will be a pop-up. And the third change is right here. You can now use a ritual vessel just as you can use currency, for example, on strong boxes right here, right there with this icon. This last one is one of the most annoying things in the game that will now change, which is a divine shrine that used to be really annoying. You needed like phasing, go through all the mobs which are invulnerable, and then exactly click on the shrine, which was quite hard, especially if there's enemies around with a lot of hitboxes. So now your click will prioritize shrines nearby. And this is not just huge for divine shrines, it's also huge quality of life for something like QoL, because QoL will sometimes spawn shrines that you don't even see, or you just don't really mind, you don't want to backtrack. Now if you click, at least the way I'm thinking about it, it should give you more buffs that you don't maybe even intend to pick up. Now, those are the obvious changes, but as you guys know, GGG loves to put Easter eggs into their reveal videos, and that is the case here as well. For example, this currency exchange window where all the normal currencies are at the very top, you will note that if you go in game right now, there is some currencies missing. These currencies are Horizon Orb, Harbinger Orb, and Scouting Reports as a whole, and I mean the whole category that used to be here on the left side. There is a small chance there's some things going on with like scrolling, but usually it isn't, especially with the categories. This most likely means that all of these items are gone. And there's not any categories that really make sense to me to where that you would put them. It just makes sense in the currency section. It does not really, it has nothing to do with any of these other categories. So we can speculate that they're removed. Let's see what these three items have in common. Orb of Horizon reforges a map as another of the same tier. Harbinger Orb reforges a map item as another of a tier higher. Val Scouting Report has to do with re-rolling Kirak missions, and those are also tiered. Now, my theory, my leading theory about this is that the Atlas as we know it is not going to have the same tiers as they did before. They will either change or the tier system as a whole will cease to exist. Because tiers is the only commonality that these three items have, and they are vanished. And I mean, there's no other items that we saw that have been removed, no other currencies. And if you think about the role of Orb of Horizons, and I mean, Harbinger Orbs, you could say, oh, maybe Harby gets reworked for whatever reason. But what about these two? Both Scouting Reports and Orb of Horizons have a huge role to play in how the Atlas currently sustains. And it would be a huge blow to just remove Horizon Orbs. Now, the counter theory is that, okay, so the theory is Harbinger got reworked and we don't need Harbinger Orbs anymore. And Orb of Horizons are now somehow linked to Mirages, so they maybe have been renamed. And maybe Kirak got reworked and it's now called different and it's also Mirage stuff. Like, sure, that could also be the case, but at least I'm thinking there's something to this. Thinking a little bit further about how people dislike tier 17s, how big the jump is from tier 16s to 16.5s, tier 17s, maybe they thought, you know what, I don't think this is salvageable, and the way we're going to do difficulty now is going to have different steps, like maybe something you have to opt in instead of just the normal tier system. And you might think, oh, that's way too huge of a rework. They're not going to do that in one league. I want to remind you, there was a league where they just introduced the Atlas as a whole. There was a league where they completely redid how loot works. There was a league where they introduced the Atlas passive tree, right? There was leagues where all of a sudden there's a regional passive tree where everything is around watchstones or whatever they were called back in the day. Like there was so many huge reworks back in the day that we are not familiar to anymore because the endgame has been stagnant. Sure, a lot of things have been added to the Atlas passive tree here, like a cluster here, a cluster there. But overall, this might be our next big update. Cope, sure it might be, but let's look at some other stuff that we can glean from this video because GGG, as I said, is very intentional with their trailers, and that doesn't just go for what they show here, it's also what they show on the buff bar, it's what they show on their skill bar. So the first thing they showed here is that Mark is playing Kinetic Fusillade. And if you're unaware, I played this skill in Frisia. I had one of my best league starts ever. It's extremely smooth on ballistas, so I'm already prepping it over on twitch.tv/Palsteron for the last few days. And people are saying, oh, it's gonna get nerfed. They're joking around it, but I really hope this is just a coincidence because sometimes there are coincidences, but not actually that often. So let's just say I'm a little bit concerned. The other two things we can glean from this screen or the skill bar is the Sigil of Power, which might hint at a potential mana nerf, and that there is 4 shield charges that are aligned in a WASD shape. Maybe it means something. Next, we have Forbidden Rite of Soul Sacrifice, which is on the bar, which doesn't mean necessarily that it gets nerfed. I feel like it's in a good space now. Who knows? But there's a hashtag support down here, or at least it looks like it. Now, if you enhance a little bit further, it might be Pinpoint. If you don't know, Pinpoint has this symbol right here. So it's this right here. Left. Could also be it, and maybe I'm just, yeah, maybe I'm just blind. So who knows, maybe Forbidden Rite of Soul Sacrifice was teasing a new support gem. Maybe it was just Pinpoint. Then we have potential slam nerfs. There is an item set here in the background that has slam items. There's also slam adjacent skills all over the place in a lot of these. For example, here. Then we have something at 206, something that Fubgun's gonna like. These are obviously hinting at bow buffs, so you have to bear with me here. There's a bow right here, one bow. There is another bow that he's going to hover over in a second. That's 2 bows. And there's a bow in his offhand. So 3 bows, that's basically bow buffs confirmed. And then there's also a headhunter here to seal the deal. So yeah, just scream it and shout it from the rooftops. But overall, huge quality of life changes, especially the trade ones, are super interesting. I want to know if these like Horizon Orbed scouting reports and Harbinger Orbs getting removed, maybe it doesn't mean anything. Maybe they have their new category. Maybe they are now Mirage items, and Mirage is the new endgame mechanic that, I don't know, kind of involves map crafting. Sure, that could be, but what if they actually thought tiers are not the way to go, and they're going to rework it and maybe even make a system like Hades at the end where you kind of have to click your difficulty in and you have exact control over how much difficulty you want in your map. Either way though, I'm super stoked to see what's going to happen. In 2 days, there's going to be the official reveal. I'm obviously going to keep you guys up to date. And until then, since I still don't have a slogan, see you next time.